When everybody understands the processes and they're all documented, it's easy to get anybody trained. I always want to bring people into my team that have great hospitality experience, because if you're a great server, you know the difference between the table over here that wants you to be part of their party and the table over here that is a business lunch that only needs you there when they need you there. And if you know how to read both of those tables and morph yourself into them, you get a really good tip. And it's the same with our dentistry.
This is Growth in Dentistry, a dental intelligence podcast, where we ask the question, what does growth in dentistry mean to you? I'm Steve Jensen, a dated dental nerd and your host.
Welcome, everyone. I am so excited for another episode of the Growth in Dentistry podcast. Today, we have a super special guest that I actually just met a couple weeks ago. Now, before I jump in and share who it is, a quick shout out to the marketing team at Dental Intelligence. Week after week, they put in so much work to support me in this podcast and for sponsoring this podcast. And I just want to tell them thank you. And as always, they have an offer for listeners. They'll give you a $50 gift card just for checking out Dental Intelligence. And if you haven't checked it out for a while, they've got some cool new features like scorecards, insurance claims processing, automated eligibility, and so much more. So go check it out if it's been a while. There's more than just the data stuff that I think people know Dental Intelligence for. They've got so much more. So come check it out. And without any further ado, I want to introduce our guest for today. So I have Dr. Gerilyn, and then is it Alfe?
Yeah,
Am I going to say that right? Okay. Gerilyn
just like
Alfe.
me, the E is not silent.
Okay, cool. And I should have known that. I made a note and I couldn't find it. So
Okay.
we just met a couple of weeks ago. So I got invited to do a webinar. And it's a series that I am doing one every single quarter. And Gerilyn joined, and I had never met her before, just for context. And she gave a presentation. She's a dentist. She has been practicing since 1995. I think I just was looking at LinkedIn. So I'm going to go with 1995. So she's been in the biz for a long time. And here's what I was really impressed with. So I travel the whole country speaking and going to trade shows and meeting with dentists, and all dentists are brilliant. Like, I love working in dentistry. I'm not a dentist myself. I'm a business guy, an econ number nerd. And here's what I have found, though. It's a rare breed when I can find a dentist who not only can have a successful practice, but can document and really understand like what actually makes my business successful, and each individual team member and role, document it, and then go and replicate themselves in someone else. And as I listened to Gerilyn, what I was fascinated by is her ability to document things. One thing, and maybe we'll jump into this, one thing in particular that I loved is she went and walked through in this presentation 10 steps to an outstanding new patient experience. And even just that alone, like if I could bottle that up and just share it with every dentist on the planet, I would be thrilled, because I look at data. So for context, new patients across the whole industry, the average new patient is only getting reappointed at 54%. So meaning most new patients aren't sticking at dental practices. And so all that marketing dollars are like going to waste. So anyway, I'm going to shut my mouth. Welcome, Gerilyn, to the podcast. I just wanted the listeners to know how excited I am to listen and learn from you. I think what we'll do today is have you kind of jump into your story. I want to talk about your practice in Chicago. While it's not your first practice, I want to talk about that one a little bit, because I think it's kind of a cool story, and have you give us a little background about you. So I'm going to shut my mouth. Hello, Gerilyn. Welcome. Tell us about you. Why did you get into dentistry, and get us up until the point where you're starting this cool practice in Chicago?
Okay, cool. Thanks, Steve. So I graduated from Tufts Dental in 93, and I worked as an associate for 2 years in two very different types of practices, which was a great learning experience for me, because I started to learn that dentistry is way more than just cutting teeth. If you want to own a practice, you need to be a good and smart and savvy business person. You need to have excellent communication skills, and you need to know how to lead your team, which we are taught none of that in dental school. And then I bought into a practice, and I worked as a partner in this other practice for about 10 years in New England, where I grew up. Sold that in 2002, moved to Chicago. And so I moved to Chicago in 2003, started working as an associate 2004. with the intention of buying in, but it just wasn't the right cultural fit for me. And I was at the point where I had enough knowledge and enough gumption. I'm trying to think of a PC word to use there. To just do my own thing. I had a really clear vision of what my ideal practice was going to look like. So within 12 months, I built a startup practice where I had 0 patients when I first started. I set it up to be insurance independent and 100% fee for service, which
Okay,
was
so right out of the gates, you were that way. Okay, that's
yeah, the
bold.
practice that
Great.
I was partners in, we started out accepting a whole bunch of insurance plans and started to, get out of it. We actually, that's a whole other discussion that I do on, how to drop insurance. And I can share with you my story about how not to do it, because we did the knee jerk. We're totally annoyed reaction, dropped everything, lost 20% of our patient base, thought we were going to implode our practice. But after about 6 months, when people went elsewhere and experienced not the same type of care, they started to come back. So I learned what not to do, which is part of how I formulated my, how to handle insurance in your practice plan. And I said, this is the way that I want to practice. I don't want to have the insurance be a middleman. I don't want it to have my patients feel like it's dictating the way that I treat and how I do my diagnosis and treatment planning. It had no place in my model. And so I built this practice. It was a small practice by design. It was very boutique. I did about 80% was cosmetics. I did some TMD treatment and a lot of adult.
Just so listeners can kind of like size up the practice. How many ops? What was the team like size wise?
Yeah, I had 3 ops. It
Yes,
was
so small.
1,500 square feet. And I had 1 assistant / admin and 1 hygienist and me.
Yeah.
And occasionally we had a 4th person, depending upon how the volume was going. But
Yeah, that's great. So you're running
we were lean and mean.
1 full-time hygiene op and then 2 ops for yourself, or you're doing like part-time hygiene with consults or something? So 1 full-time hygiene.
Yeah, hygiene, we had 1 room that was designated for hygiene, but because I was a small volume practice, my hygienist would maybe see, maybe 4 to 6 patients a day. And then she also assisted me too. So my hygienist was hybrid as well. And I'm all about cross-training. I want everyone to be able to do whatever they can within the legal limit of the law. And I would always tell new hires, listen, the only thing constant in my practice is change. I'm looking for people that I assume you've got a great brain. I want people that have a hungry work ethic, that truly have a team personality where the team comes before I do, that are willing to learn, to roll up their sleeves. They understand there's going to be homework if you really want to ace this position, and can take constructive feedback and actually use it to help improve. So if you want to own this position and stay with us for a long time, those are my expectations. What I promise to do for you is I will train the heck out of you until you tell me, Dr. Alfe, I've got it. We give you tons of support. Like I had a checklist for every single thing in my practice. I used to joke, if you could read English and open a drawer, you could come in and assist me, whether you knew anything at all about dentistry. And that's one of the things that I notice a lot of dentists are struggling with. We're all struggling. Well, I don't practice anymore. I sold my practice in 2017 because I've had 3 back surgeries. That's why I got out of clinical, went and got my MBA, and now I'm doing coaching. And what I've noticed with a lot of doctors, they're all struggling to get staff, right? Team is the #1 challenge that they have. Anyone that I work with, I really try to have them understand it is more important that you find somebody who's got great customer service skills than they know what the difference is between an explorer and a curette. Because that stuff, if you have the right person, they'll learn it quickly. Dentistry is really not all that difficult. I hate to clue us all in on that. But it's easy to learn the steps. It's easy to learn the instruments. But you can't have somebody who doesn't care about customer service experience, who doesn't want to go above and beyond to completely wow your patient, who doesn't understand that the patients come first and then my teammates and then me. That's the hierarchy of service. And that's
I want to chime in. There was someone asked a question in a couple of Facebook groups. So the same person, a good friend, Gary Bird, does marketing and stuff, but he asked a question in a couple of Facebook groups a couple weeks ago, maybe it was last week, where he said, hey, just curious in everyone's thoughts, would you rather hire an A+ personality and maybe they're like a B- with skills today, Or would you hire someone who is a B minus personality and they're an A person with skills? And I was actually pretty happy. Like the grand majority of people were like, oh, hands down, I would hire for personality. There's like very few circumstances where like you're okay with a junky, lame personality. You know, there might be a few. Some people made some comments where like, oh, that's fair. Like if it's like a one-time visit to like a heart surgeon and
Mhm.
you're going to be under general anesthesia, yeah, like you probably don't care. You probably just want someone who's really clinically excellent, right? But if it's something where it's like you're spending time like a dentistry, dentistry is highly relationship oriented. Like not only does your team and yours as the dentist kind of personality influence case acceptance, it's like heavily reliant on that. Like
Mhm.
it is so common. I see it all the time. I'll see dentists who have great conversational skill, and I have no idea how good they are clinically, but their case acceptance is great. And there are other dentists who are who have invested heavily in their clinical skill, and they're probably amazing clinicians, but the patients would never know it, because they come across as so timid. So that's important with teams too. Sorry, I got us off track a little. I agree with you. Like
Yeah.
team and personality, the point I was trying to make is it's so crucial. Now, keep talking through this piece. So there is this problem in dentistry where there's been lots of turnover. There's been hygienists who have left the market. There's been front office team members, assistants who have left the dental industry for other work. And so they've had to find new people. And in order to take someone from outside of dentistry and integrate them in, that's a beast to do. I mean, we even struggle with that as a company. We're hiring folks and we have to teach them dentistry and then we have to teach them software. And that's a lot of work if you don't have really good like documentation and like adoption into the business practices. So talk me through a little bit about the way you think about that, because I'm sure you're pretty good at it.
So we were meticulous in any single thing that we did. If there's a process, it can be documented. And I was all about systems and processes because when people can learn the steps, I don't want them to memorize it. I want them to understand it, because when you memorize something, you can forget it. When you understand the concept, and the more that you really embrace it, you can pivot immediately depending upon whoever's in front of you, right? When I go through scripting with my own team, when I was practicing and when I do it with teams now, I always say, listen, use this as a starting point, but don't memorize what I wrote down because it's going to not sound authentic. You have to understand what the points are that we're trying to bring across, whether it's discussing with a patient that we just went out of network with their insurance company, or discussing a cancellation policy, or discussing your financial arrangements, or discussing your dental treatment. They have to understand that each person processes information differently. They're going to all ask you different kinds of questions. Some won't even ask you questions. You have to get really good at reading who is sitting in front of you and changing the way that you communicate so that your message gets heard. Like I worked with a coach myself for 20 plus years. I was very lucky. I found a great coach like 5 years out of dental school, and I worked with her on and off, and then a couple of other coaches throughout, but I always had someone in my corner because it helped keep me on track. I am, a very self-motivated person, but just like everybody else, you have those days where you get home and you just got worn out. You want to stick your feet up on the coffee table, throw on some bad television, eat bad food. And if I knew I had a coach call the next day, I didn't have the luxury to do that. I needed to sit down, make sure my reports were ready so that I had all my information to go through that coaching call. So she helped keep me accountable on the times that I didn't necessarily want to feel that way, because we all go through those phases. So that was tremendously helpful, and understanding the importance of having a system for every single thing in your practice. In fact, I had a patient when I first opened my practice in Chicago. He bought me a copy of the checklist manifesto.
No way.
Because he
Awesome.
came in and he had been a patient maybe for like a couple of months, and the book had just come out, and I was doing some bigger work on him. So we would actually hang our checklists in our treatment room, and my assistant would keep track as we were going. Because if you get up to go do a hygiene check, it's easy to lose your place. And if you have a busy practice and you're doing multiple hygiene checks, by the time you get back to your chair, you are going to take a second or two to get yourself reoriented. This way, it immediately got me right back up to speed. I just glanced at the checklist and he loved it. So we did a lot of disc profiling. He was a very high C. So he was conscientious. For him, that made him feel so at ease that I had this. And so he bought it. He said, Dr. Alfe, out of everybody I know you're going to read this book cover to cover probably tonight. I'm like, oh my gosh, Bob, I absolutely will. I love this.
See, I'm a high C too. That's probably why I like you so much, is because when you started showing your processes, I was like, I like this lady. This is good.
Yeah, because when everybody understands the processes and they're all documented, it's easy to get anybody trained. I always want to bring people into my team that have great hospitality experience, because if you're a great server, you know the difference between the table over here that wants you to be part of their party and the table over here that is a business lunch that only needs you there when they need you there. And if you know how to read both of those tables and morph yourself into them, you get a really good tip. And it's the same with our dentistry, right? Because if I have a patient in front of me who's a high C like you, Steve, and we have already discerned that from our new patient call, because we take the time to get to know that person as a person before they come in. And during our morning huddle, I would get a rundown. Hey, Dr. Alfe, you got Steve coming in at 1 o'clock. Great for you. He's a really high C, and he's also a very high I. So like, he's got great energy. You're going to be able to chat with him. He's probably going to ask you a lot of questions. Perfect. I love that. I already know what to do. If they said, oh, I've got Sally coming in, she's a really high S, I was like, oh, I have so got to like slow my roll, right? So that I can get on her speed. I would quiet down. I wouldn't have any much emotion. I would pause a lot more. And being able to do that and having my entire team dialed into that is the reason why our treatment acceptance was over 90% on the first visit. And just understand, I was usually presenting treatment plans that were over $10,000 because I did a lot of cosmetics.
Yep, you had to.
So
with a small practice. And I'll make this call out too. I think what Gerilyn's getting at is so key. If you're not familiar with the disc profile, there's 4 different profiles, obviously, like the acronym D, I, S, and C. And while I don't think we don't have time to like jump into each one. If you're unfamiliar with it, definitely go just like Google disc, be familiar with those profiles. And the idea here is everyone's a little bit different in the way that they're oriented, the way they like to be communicated with, the way they like to be talked to in this scenario when it comes to treatment. And so if you can communicate with each individual in their personality style, they're going to be way more likely to say yes to treatment. Where someone who's very dominant, right, who's like a D personality, just wants to get to the point very, very quickly, where someone who's more conscientious, that's the C word that like I am, they like things to be explained to them more. They want to understand what is going on and what has to get fixed and how are we going to do it. And if I understand that, then I'm like, great, cool, no anxiety there. Let's knock it out. So everyone's a little different. Some people are a little more soft. Some people just like need to be told like an I, where it's like, hey, this is the most amazing thing on the planet. You're going to freaking love this crown. It's going to make you look beautiful and everyone's going to love it. So if you communicate that way, then it will help with case acceptance. So I think that's really interesting you were doing that. One thing I'll just comment, I've been fascinated with smaller dental practices lately. This idea of kind of slowing or not necessarily slowing down, but like honing in on like really what kind of dentistry you want to do. For the last 6 years, I've been like, and this is still true, like these are like kind of like industry standards, so to speak. Like in general, you want 12 to 1,500 active hygiene patients, 2 full-time hygienists, funnel 1, doctor's worth of work. And those are like, proven, that model works. But it's interesting. Most of the time people think like, okay, if I get big and I have like 6 hygienists, 2 associates working with me, then like, that's when things can break. And that's true. But it's almost more impressive to me if you can have 3 ops, and have that be successful, because it's so much higher, like the stakes are higher. That's why I think what you did is really interesting. Like you don't have as much leniency to have a few case presentations go south. Like each one has to be dialed in. And that's where I think it's so fascinating that I think that experience forced you to have like really good processes and make sure that everyone on the team was especially dialed, because you aren't high volume and you couldn't be. And so it forces that behavior to like, okay, I got to really think through each day, each moment to make sure it's dialed in. Now, let's talk through, we have a little bit of time here. Let's talk through a little bit on this transition. So 2017, 2018, you got some back problems. You decide, okay, I can't like lean over patients anymore, which is a
Yes.
bummer to have
Yeah.
to like exit dentistry, but maybe a gift for the rest of us. You've jumped in to coaching is what you're doing now and helping practices. I'd be interested to hear, like, what are your favorite practices to work with? Are you kind of cool with all of them? Do you like the big dogs that are doing like 2-3 million in production and they're just like factories? Do you like the more boutique stuff where you're helping them like hone things in like you did in Chicago? What are some of your favorites? Or maybe a story where you're like, you know what, like this is one of my favorite clients and here's what we were able to do. I'd love to hear.
Yeah, no matter what kind of a practice it is, the most important thing for me when I am connecting with a new lead is to ensure that A, we get each other, because I tell every potential client this. I am not going to tell you anything that every other coaching consultant on the planet isn't going to tell you. They're going to tell you the same exact thing. The processes are proven, right? There's a way to schedule ideally. There's a way to collect money. The same way we do with our dentistry. There's a good way to be able to efficiently and repetitively prep a crown so that you have excellent results. And it's true for every single thing that comes to running the business. So I'm not going to be giving you a ton of like aha moments like, oh my gosh, I've never heard to do it that way before. If you've been practicing for more than 2 years and have gone to at least 20 hours of CE, you've heard this already. The most important thing is that I have a good connection with you, that you feel safe enough with me to be able to share what is bothering you the most. I say it's a lot like therapy. If you don't feel that you can confide in me, and you have to understand, I'm coming from a place of no judgment. I 100% understand what you are going through, because I can almost guarantee anything you're struggling with, I have dealt with in the 25 years that I practiced and owned. So I am not putting myself up here like I did everything absolutely right. And I'm here to tell you all the secret ways of doing it. No, I learned a lot through my own mistakes, because I didn't look at them as mistakes. I looked at them as learning opportunities, and having somebody else who is not as emotionally invested in my practice, AKA my coach, was able to help me break down certain things when I would be frustrated with something that was happening, especially if it was a continuous issue. And having all of that, I think because of the fact that I have walked in their shoes, I've owned practices. My first practice was a huge one. We had 10 chairs. I had 4 hygienists, 4 assistants, 3 ladies at the front, an office manager, a partner, and me. So I've worked in every shape and size of practice. We took a lot of insurance and then we didn't. So I can very easily pivot right to whichever place that doctor is in, knowing where that doctor wants to go. They have to be super clear on that too, because it's hard to measure your progress if you don't know what your end game is. And then be able to, figure out when I do my coaching, is it going to be best to start out with just one-on-one coaching with a doctor? Because a lot of times it is. And then if they want to do any sort of a la carte additions where I come in and train the team, or I can do a lot over Zoom, even with the team, and be able to do breakout sessions with individual departments. Like, it's very much, you pick what is going to work for you. And I think because I take that approach rather than a cookie cutter. In fact, 2 of my oldest clients have said that the reason that they immediately connected with me is because I didn't have a cookie cutter approach. It wasn't like a lot of other companies out there. It's okay, at 3 months, you need to review this with your client, and this is the system you're going to talk about. And then at 6 months, this is what you focus on. Well, what if the client doesn't need the 3-month thing at 3 months? Maybe they don't need that for 9 months. They've got a bigger issue right now that we need to address. And I think because I have actual real world experience, I can immediately dive in. There have been times I've gone in to do team trainings and we've gone completely off the agenda because there was something else that was more important at that moment that needed to get done. And even if I'm not prepped for it, I know how to handle it. And so I think that's part of what distinguishes my coaching program from a lot of the other ones out there. There are a lot of great ones out there, and I'm not saying you have to be a dentist to be a good dental coach. What I've found is that when I get a lead from somebody, and I do have a support team, the doctors want to work with me
Mhm.
because they feel like I totally get whatever they're dealing with. And I do, but it doesn't mean that you had to have been a dentist to be able to coach effectively. I just find that it does resonate. And so, like my very first client, she went from, I actually wrote this down because I knew we were going to be talking about this.
Yeah.
So when I started with her, the reason that she hired me, she got referred to me from an architect that's part of my networking group in Chicago. And when I first spoke with her, I said, why do you feel like you need a coach? She said, I'm overworked, I'm overwhelmed, I'm burnt out, and so is my team, and I can't keep doing this. If I have to keep at this pace, I'm gonna die, or I'm gonna quit. Like I just can't do this anymore. She had an insanely busy practice. She's one dentist. She had over 2,000 active patients.
Yeah, that's a
It was
ton.
real. You know,
Yeah.
I went and scrubbed her reports
That's a factory. They're just pumping them through.
and so once I started working with her, so over the time that I started with her to now, her collections, because that's the most important number. Her
Yeah, that's
collections
the
have
one that people want to hear about for sure.
147%
Whoa, growth.
over
That's
3.5 years.
incredible. That's so great.
93% growth to her gross and 90% to her net collections. Because part of what we did over this period of time is I helped her get out of every single insurance plan. When I first started with her, she was in 30 plus insurance plans. She didn't even know some of the ones. She was in 2 or 3 umbrella plans and didn't realize that they had so much overlap with the ones that she was in direct participation with. Now you have to understand that because I didn't accept insurance, I didn't accept assignment of benefits even. My patients paid in cash and then they got reimbursed. I had to learn how this monster works to be able to coach my clients effectively. And now the more that I learned about it, the more I hate all those companies. I'm like on a one-woman crusade to take down the evil empire. I am Luke Skywalker and they are Darth Vader. But you know, what was happening is as they started shedding some of these, she did this not to make more money. She did this so that her practice would slow down. And you know what? After dropping Delta, which, you know, is like the worst one to get rid of, people freak out about that. They're afraid that they're going to lose 50% of their patient base. And I have to tell them, listen, if you do it the right way and you have a time frame and you are methodical about how you do it and you make sure the team is all on board and everybody's well trained, you should expect to lose less than 10% of the Delta patients, not your entire patient base, of your Delta patients, if you do it right. She has lost less than 7% of her Delta patients. She is still too busy. She had to bring on an associate. And her thing is now, at least, she's cut down a day and a half where she's not in the office anymore doing clinical. The associate's picking up that slack. Her hygienists are producing so much better because now they're using her fee schedule rather than those anemic fee schedules. So they are excited because they're finally hitting their goals. Because, you know, no matter how much we try to work toward a goal, if you're automatically having to chop 30 to 40% off your top line, which is what you have to do when you're in network with those companies, then it makes it very defeating for the team. We were able to implement a bonus system. They have been bonusing in like the team as a whole, 5 digits year over year total. That's real money.
Yeah.
And most importantly,
exciting for the team.
Most importantly, the culture is a 180 from when I started. This dentist, she is an amazing person. She is so giving. She's a perfect servant leader. And she had 1 or 2 bad apples that were, you know, kind of driving the culture for the team. And once we finally shed them, everybody else stepped up. They added a couple more amazing people. And it is like night and day when I get into their office now compared to it's palpable when you walk into an office where there's stress. And I tell the dentist this, if I am noticing this and I'm not nervous when I walk in, what do you think your clients, your patients are feeling when they cross that threshold? Because when you have a patient who comes in, even if they don't tell you that they're nervous about being in practice, which means that their spidey senses are like this, right? So everything they are hypersensitive about. When you can actually start to morph and be more like your patient, that is the #1 way to make them start to feel more comfortable. Because when people are more comfortable, they listen better. And when they listen better, they understand better. And when they understand better and they feel like you get them as a person, they are more likely to move forward with treatment. So it is never from the standpoint of, we just want to push treatment so we make our numbers, because that's never what we do. We never make decisions based solely on the numbers. The numbers tell us a story. It's only part of a story. I need to figure out why your numbers are the way they are.
Mhm.
And what happens is, when we do the right things for the right reasons, the money follows.
Yep.
And it always comes from a place of, if part of your vision for your practice or your mission for your practice is to provide the best possible optimal oral health for every single person that wants to be seen by you, it is in your patient's best interest to say yes to your recommendations. Is it in your patient's best interest to say no to perio treatment? No. Okay, fine. Say no now. Start saving up for your implants and dentures, because I'm going to need to do those in about 10 years. So you want to spend a little bit right now and save your natural teeth. We're here to help you with that. You choose not to. I don't know that I'm the right practice for you, because I have a certain level that I expect my patients to be understanding that I am going to present you with ideal treatment. It's always your final choice, whether you want to do some of it, none of it, or all of it. If you want to do all of it, we'll figure out how to make it fit into your schedule and your budget. We're experts in that. But I assume that you want ideal treatment, so that's what I present you with. If you don't, that's okay. I'm probably just not the right office for you. And that's the thing that I think a lot of dentists struggle with, is that they feel like every single person that comes through the door, they have to bend over backwards for. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't treat your patients like gold, you should. But part of the reason why a lot of offices are feeling very worn out is because they are having to do volume, because they are not maximizing their time with the patients that they have. I bet, on average, if I went in and did a quick, dental intel snapshot of their practice, I would estimate that they probably have over $500,000 of unscheduled treatment. And that's from the people that are, some of them are regular patients, right? Stop trying to get more volume through the front door. Close your cases with the people that already know, like, and trust you. You just don't know how to talk to them.
Yeah, that's 100% true. In fact, I'll just say, like, the average dentist out there is only getting 36% of the treatment they're diagnosing, the dollars, actually completed within 12 months. So there is, to your point, so much room out there. I just met with a dentist this last week who has 4% when he presents smaller cases, treatment dollar acceptance, which is like very good across the board in comparison to the industry. But what I loved seeing is that regardless of if he presented a small case, a couple of fillings, or a $10,000+ case, his case acceptance was above 60%. Like, it was his treatment, and I should make sure this is clear, his treatment dollar case acceptance, which is different than patient case acceptance. Because a lot of docs love that, because for everyone, literally, like, every dentist can get a patient to say yes to something. Like, almost every dentist on this planet, their patient case acceptance is like 80+%. But when we start talking about these bigger cases, all of a sudden, for most dentists, when I look at the total dollars getting presented, their treatment getting accepted at the small stuff is high, and then it just like drops off really fast. So I'm a huge believer in what you just said. Now, we're coming up on time. I could spend all day chatting with you. This has been so fun. I'm going to finish up with asking the question, what does growth in dentistry mean to you? And we'll wrap this up. So love to hear what your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I have always believed that no matter what I was doing, whether it was personal or professional, I need to be growing. I love that phrase that rut is just a grave with the ends kicked out. And so growing in dentistry means that doctors have to start to become more nimble. They have to understand that personal connection with patients is going to become more and more important. I think if COVID did anything for us, it made us understand the importance of actual connections, not social media connections, where people think a gazillion friends and they really don't. And getting them and their team better trained in all of that, so that they can start to connect with their patients, because I see that dentistry is, it's diverging more and more now. There are still a good percentage of DSOs. It's not nearly as much as what most dentists think, however, and a lot of them use that fear of, oh my gosh, there's 2 DSOs starting up in my community. Who cares? I didn't care who was, I could have had another dentist above me, below me, next to me. I'm not in competition with them. That's what dentists have to understand. You're in competition with what your patient's spending their discretionary income on. So how do you grow? You provide the most amazing experience that they would never get anywhere else, because when you can do that, they become lifelong fans. They become part of your marketing program, because they will sing your praises from the mountaintops. They will post on social media for you. They will have their friends and family come to you. And if you want to grow, I want you to focus on building better relationships with your team and your patients, and understanding the importance of outsourcing absolutely every single thing that does not enhance your patient experience. So outsource your marketing, outsource your analytics, outsource your insurance processing. There are at least 5 or 6 things that you can have somebody else who's better at it than you, by the way. Take care of those tasks that right now are draining your team to deal with. They are not well trained in how to do it. Take it off their plate so that they can start to connect better with your patients. And you'll find that when you start to focus on that, your practice will organically grow, because when your patients are sending people to you, you're getting more of the people that already know, like, trust you. And so it's easier to close cases because those people are already pre-vetted. And so that's when you start to really enjoy your dental life again. And it allows you to take off more time. It allows you to improve your profit margin. It allows you to reward your team. It allows you to add that new piece of equipment, upgrade that software, add on things to make everyone's life easier, more seamless, and as automated as possible, because the relationship part is never going to be automated. So when you can automate everything else, it allows you more time to focus on the person in front of you. When you learn how to do that, you're going to have massive success. I have no doubt.
That is a great response, Dr. Gerilyn. It was awesome to have you on the podcast with me today. Thank you again for joining. I'll just say this for the listeners. The name of Gerilyn's company is Get Ahead Coaching and Consulting. If you want to find her, she does have a website, getaheadcc.com. So we'll throw that link in the show notes as well. If you want to work with her, reach out to her. She's an absolute baller. It is so fun to get to know you, Jerry. I would definitely recommend, if you're looking for like a high-level coach who's done it, who's been in your shoes, Gerilyn is phenomenal. So thank you for coming and joining, and excited to get to hang out with you more in the future. It's been awesome to get to know you, Gerilyn, and we will talk soon. For the listeners, thank you again for joining us for another episode of the Growth in Dentistry podcast. My name is Steve Jensen, your host and fellow dental data nerd. Keep growing, and we'll talk soon.